Hello, good afternoon, dzień dobry, Magadang Gabi. For those ones who don't know, this is good afternoon or rather good evening in Filipino, as today we have one of the representatives coming from this part of the world. It's a bit challenging moment for me, as for the first time ever, I'm going through my phone, not regularly through my equipment, through my computer. I was going through some technology challenges, but here we go. And today with me, amazing trio, which whom I will invite and describe in a second, going through the topic of constant learners challenging the status quo. Let me welcome Audrey Turay Magdato during the webinar of Strong Women in IT, our Asia representative, one of the strong women in IT coming from Philippines. Audrey is holding the position of the head of regional sales of CrowdStrike. And she's been one of the super active women in our community for quite a long time. Welcome, Audrey. Again, good night or good evening to you. Wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Gosha. This is truly an honorable experience. Excited to share my insights.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, let me go through another one on our list. Equally important, Florentina Friends, or Flora Friends, as we sometimes name her and call her. Florentina is holding a position of the head of product in Autologic, is a constant learner and a big challenger. Florentina, hello, welcome. By the way, you should know that Flora is somewhere in the world and she's on live through the other part of the globe. Welcome, Flora. Thanks again for being with us.
Yeah, hello guys, hello everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to our webinar. I'm really glad to be here with you today and to share my insights as well. I'm in Copenhagen now during EBA Day event, so I hope that you hear me very, very well.
Good. Wonderful. Great to have you with us. And last but not the least, Łukasz Fox, welcome on board. I wish to see you here. You see a beautiful shadow over the back of Łukasz. Łukasz, the man representing all the ones for whom inclusion is critically important in a daily life and supporting also the diversity on a daily business. Łukasz Fox is holding the position of the AI National Skills Director for Microsoft in the region. Łukasz, welcome on board. And with you, I think we have known each other for more than 15 years. Am I right, Łukasz?
That's right, definitely. And thank you, Gosha, for having me. I'll call myself as an ally of this great initiative, and I'm glad that we could meet, especially in that AI era. I believe it's worth to pause and reflect and talk to great experts like all of you. So again, thank you for having me. And that background actually behind me is a small advert of the most beautiful place in the country where I am. So Poland, I'm based in Sopot, so definitely in case you are still making your plans for the summer vacation, join me. Join me in Sopot, please.
So we have quite a crowd with us today. We have more than 60 people enrolled from different parts of the globe. This trio, as you see, is really super international today. Audrey with us coming from Philippines, Flora being in Copenhagen, and Łukasz being in Sopot, which is the seaside part of Poland, as we look at the beautiful backgrounds or shadow. Tim, the topic of our conversation today, and by the way, this has always been produced as a podcast and shared with you through our broader channels, is how do the constant learners challenge the status quo? For me, knowing you for many years, each of you is a true role model in constant learning, but also asking difficult questions and being a role model challenger. Tell me, please, is it in your DNA forever since you remember, or you've simply learned to be a challenger? And the second part of the question would really be, is there any cost in your daily, private, and especially business life to be a challenger, to build this reputation that each of you is a challenger, or at least you are being perceived as being the challengers? So, Flora, how was it in your case? Was it natural? It was inborn, or you learned it over the years?
Yes, so Gosia, if you ask my mom, for example, she'll probably tell you that always. So yes, so I think, but in my opinion, if you're on different steps in your life, so first you finish school, after that you started your professional career, etc. It also will change because you have more and more experience. Probably those how you are challenging something is different at the beginning of your career. After that, based on your experience, what you can do, where some barriers between how far you can be, you can be challenging for the other, etc. So yeah, so definitely from always, but I'm sure that this definition, how you are challenge another person, or what is challenger for me, what does it mean, change during years, in fact.
And the second part of the question, is there any cost of being a challenger that you see in your environment? For you, of course.
Yeah, I think it is related with the cost, because in my opinion, the people who are challenger, they are fully involved in their in every stage of their life. So in their work, in their private life, etc., etc. So if you everywhere if you try to be everywhere in 100%, the cost, your personal cost, it's relatively high. Also, those problems you attach on every stage of your, for example, if you are in startup, on every stage of the startup, you have completely different those problems you touch, etc. So yeah, but in general cost, it's in my opinion, it's relatively high.
So now I think I will ask Philippines, Asia, to speak up. Audrey, was it natural? Was it inborn, or you learned it over the years?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I've
Yeah, you
always
were
been
on
a
mute.
very inquisitive, detail-oriented person. And if you've been through any modern sales enablement, you've had it drilled into your head. Ask the why. Ask open-ended questions. But here is how that actually turns you into a constant learner and a change agent. First, it makes you a continuous learner because it forces you past the surface. When a client tells you their problem, generic reps just stop digging. An inquisitive mind keeps asking why until you uncover the real root cause. So the internal politics, the messy infrastructure, and whatnot, you end up understanding the operational reality better than your clients do, which maps out industry trends for you in real time. So, secondly, it weaponizes you to provoke change, right? So, true challengers don't just lecture or argue. That just builds a wall with your customers.
Hold on, don't go too far, because
Oh,
another of my questions based on the
oh,
curiosity will be really
okay,
related to provoking change. And
okay,
so
okay. Too
so
excited.
now going again, I really wish to know whether it was inborn or you
Hmm.
learned it over the years. How was it in your case?
So for me, it's really more on I learned it along the way. So here, I was reserving this part for a later, my answer for a later part. So, early on in my career, my mentor, my first mentor, actually told me, no question is stupid, Audrey. Never be afraid to ask. So to most people, that sounds like just a basic advice to help a rookie feel comfortable. But then as a challenger, that phrase became my motto, to dismantle the status quo. So I think along my career, 18 years of career, that helped me every day in improving myself, being a much more better salesperson. Asking the right open-ended questions and digging deep down to find out the root cause.
Wonderful. And as we talk about the costs, do you see the costs in your environment of being a challenger towards this environment?
Yes, definitely. So there's definitely the pros and the cons. So if when we're talking specific about the cons, there's definitely the emotional tax involved. So you have to tolerate being temporarily disliked, because you are being the challenger, right? So you challenge the status quo. When you challenge someone, you have to expect that you will occasionally burn bridges, and especially with the risk adverse people, and you might not be the most liked person in the room. I think
Thank you
that will
so
be
much. Yeah,
the
I
con.
think it's a super interesting thing what you just stated about this occasionally not being liked or being disliked. Yeah, because the constant challengers sometimes are not really being liked. They might even be annoying in the workspace, asking the magic question, which both of you stated, the magic question, why are we doing this? And now we are smoothly going to Łukasz, one probably of the biggest challengers I have ever met on my way, in full honesty. And how is it in your case, Łukasz, now keeping a big role of the AI skills director for Poland and even regionally? How does it work in your case? Was it inborn, this constant challenger's mindset, or you rather learned it over the years?
Yes, definitely. I'm lucky that you, Gosha, invited me for that webinar after a decade or even more of being literally professional, because I believe, when I joined the market as early in career, always definitely the question was the way to provide the input, right? So always we could raise the hand, we could provide like some value through the questions that we could ask. And definitely that was my way in terms of how I tried to understand, is there any depth or any legacy in some processes or projects that we've been pushing at the end. But I believe nowadays, 2026, I would say, is a muscle, and I believe it's a superpower that you need to build. You need to hone that as a skill, like any other, and I believe it needs to be productive, right? So like you both discussed with Audrey, I believe, raising questions might be perceived as a way to say no to some part of the effort, or simply you could block the project in case you will ask too many questions, or people are using the way to challenge yourself, just to go, so give you indirect feedback to influence the effort that you are driving. So I believe it needs to be productive. I would never raise my hand like a question in case it would not help to build something on top of what we discussed so far. And I believe it's the responsibility, right? So definitely it's great that we could do so. We could contribute to the project through our questions, through the challenger mindset that we all have. But definitely, I believe what is also common among all of us, that we've been very lucky to work in organizations that somehow support this such mindset, and we've been kind of asked to challenge those points that we've seen on our decks, pages, and emails, and so on. And I believe it differs, right? So currently, I prefer those people, and that's the mindset that I'm pushing in my projects. That it's okay to ask whenever you see it would help to push ahead and really move the needle in the way that people would understand that we are building the common ground, that no one is against just to block it. And definitely there is some tax. I love that quote, and I use it to you, Audrey, as
Yeah, I love it
an
as
author
well.
of that. Yes, I love it, because I believe not always those questions that are challenging are welcomed, right? And of course, we need to keep in mind that maybe it's better to ask those challenging questions whenever we are starting, whenever we are brainstorming, whenever we are looking for the holy grail, like product market fit or anything that is important. But when we are on the last mile of our effort, most likely some questions would not help. And we could, of course, always pivot, but I believe it would not help whenever you are just delivering your last mile in your backlog. It might simply create tension, which would not be at the end productive.
So you say that you also see this tax. Actually, each and every of you said, Flora started, Audrey stated as well, and you, Łukasz, confirmed that there is a cost, there is a tax, as Audrey nicely or smartly named this. We are often talking about this context of so-called tomato soup, right? That sometimes everyone loves, or 90% or 90 even 9% of the global population likes the tomato soup. The challenger shouldn't really feel like being liked by everyone every moment, because there are moments then being loved or liked are not necessarily giving us the right to ask the questions, which are sometimes difficult to answer. So I'm super happy that each and every of you shared such an open story, and I'm sure that everyone who is on her or his way, from the ones who listen to us or who will listen to us later on, will see that there is the tax or the cost that you need to pay if you really want to be perceived as the challenger and the constant learner. And going smoothly through this, I have another question for you. Audrey already started a bit her story, so this time I will start with her. So what does it really mean for you to be a change agent or the change provoking agent? It's, for me, and I think for many of us, quite a context for being a constant challenger and constant learner. So what does it mean? How do you define it, Audrey?
So for me, when we talk about making a challenger mindset, part of your DNA, what we're really trying to talk about is a fundamental shift, right? It's moving away from trying to keep everyone comfortable and moving towards driving real growth by disrupting the status quo and leveraging what I call productive tension. So how can I explain, like, how does this shape my daily work life, if I can share that?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So it boils down to three things for me. Number one, it's deep re-education, right? So you have to constantly study the latest industry trends, so you end up understanding your client's problem. Think about the weight of that. To truly challenge an enterprise leader today, you have to know um, their threat landscape as much as, or even better than, themselves. For instance, like educating yourself on the new Mythos threat, right? Everyone has heard about the Mythos threat, which has sent the cybersecurity community into a frenzy just very recently. So that doesn't happen by just skimming the headlines. It means diving deep into threat intelligence and adversary and whatnot. When you show up with that level of depth knowledge in front of your customers, you aren't just selling a platform anymore. You're bringing a level of insight that fundamentally changes how they view the entire security posture. So, secondly, you use direct language. You swap out those passive, polite suggestion for more assertive, insight-driven data. And lastly, I lean on into the tension. So when an uncomfortable moment happens during a meeting, stop trying to smooth it out over. Just use it as a catalyst for change.
Wonderful. So Audrey says that even in the difficult moments, you may turn this context into a positive one for the positive output, even if the tension appears online, right? Flora, what's your view here? What does it really mean for you, or how do you really define being a change agent or the provoking change or change provoking agent?
Okay, so to me, this is all about pushing myself as well as my organization to grow. We know which goals we have. I try always to understand everyone around and connecting dots and giving this whole picture, make some decision. As I was preparing for this webinar, also thinking about different profiles of people who perfectly fit as a challenging archetype. And one of those people I have in my head, it's, for example, Steve Jobs. This is a person who immediately came to my mind because look at him. He is a visionary who challenged everyone and swam against the current ultimately powerful, globally recognized organization and brand. He had also famous saying, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So and in fact he built global community of the people who don't just buy a product but also buy an idea. The problem it was that he was completely uncompromising from nature, and it was related that he also be outside of his own company due to the fact that he was uncompromising. And for me, the hardest part of being challenges here is to ability to present our vision and environment with people who don't agree. So the for me also those how what is important and what is for me, it's also a way how you try to show your arguments, and also how you drive this business or yourself, because it's not only about business, in the way where the people don't think that you attack them, but also they feel that they you convince them at the end of the day that they agree with you and with your with your way of thinking, or what with your ideas, in fact. So
Flora, so if I got you right, you really are fascinated by the ones who conquer the world in a way. They think differently, they are brave enough, they go for ideation. But what you also state, which by the way is also super close to me and many of our strong women in IT, and by the way, not only women in our community, is also the how. The way how you impact the others to follow your context. How you is this respectful or disrespectful? Sometimes in this context of the challengers, we might be confronted with the situation that people don't take the context of the social aspects, the relationship, the empathy with which they decide to share what they think, what they invented with the world, right? So the how, if I got you right, is also important, additionally to your amazing ideation and ability to create something tangible for the world, which seems critical if you really want to impact millions or billions, or if you really want to make an impact also socially in the world, not only commercially.
yeah, exactly. In my opinion, this how is extremely difficult, in fact.
Łukasz, what about you?
First of all, I would say that I love what you said so far, and definitely I will build on that. So the first thing would be that you need to be a respectful challenger. You need to come prepared, and definitely I would add +1 to what you said around that social impact. And at the end, we need to respect people, because I've seen some toxic challenger mindsets also along my career, where people were too brave. They've been having that charisma and charm, but they've been coming not prepared. They've been overwhelming everyone in the room. And of course, it was interesting from the view of someone who's been just observing that. But in case we want to drive that impact and we want to make it sustainable, we should simply say it's not okay, right? And I believe, especially nowadays, where people maybe forget about some values and they are pushing more business value, we should remind ourselves that we are human beings. And thanks to AI, maybe we could come prepared to this room much easier versus in the past. So even in case you don't like to prepare, all of those agents and LLMs or assistants could help you to come really prepared, and always you could over prepare for some context of the challenge that you are pushing. And definitely it's all about being respectful. I believe I've seen too many cases where it was out of the game. And of course, we have some purposes. We are not purely focused on the philanthropic world in our roles, but at the end we should have that kind of moral guidance that would steer us and that would act as our compass for the actions that we'll take. So I believe it's okay to be a challenger, and you could build that like we discussed so far, but definitely we should state that there is some toxic kind of approach in that game, and we should really punish that, and we should maybe kind of put in spotlight those folks who are definitely, for example, thinking about their customers, about their end users, and they are asking those challenging questions and making challenging statements, but for the sake of that target group or the bright future that we are all trying to build, instead of kind of giving the kudos to their own ego, which is, I believe, finally going away. But again, I've seen it, and I believe we should still prize those people who are going against those approaches, because at the end, no matter what we are doing, in case we are, for example, in the AI industry, I believe we should all deliver that revolution much better versus any other that we've seen in the past, right? It should empower people, not displace people. And also, in case we are building AI-driven organizations who are helping those people to come prepared to the meetings, it should be sustainable and somehow inclusive and healthy, which is not always the case, because I also love those inventors. I love those people who are building the better world, sending literally rockets to the moon or any other planets. But in case they are not kind of supporting those values that I believe we all here respect and support, it should be a no-go, right? I would never pick even the product for the brand who is going into the toxic approach. And it's also okay to say what's kind of welcome and what's not in the cultures that we are building in our organizations.
Łukasz, thanks so much. And I think it's for all of us. I saw also the reactions coming from Audrey and Flora. I think each of us is so strong about combining what's going on, the pace of technology, as you stated, the drive that AI is making on people's lives, on the business. But what you stated is so critical, and all of us agree so much. You also mentioned that a respectful challenger, is something that you said being a respectful challenger is something really close to you. Having the people in your boat instead of out of your boat, that's something which is your context of definition of the change provoking agent, with all of these also three elements that Audrey mentioned. So now, as you already mentioned, the living, indeed, guys, we are talking in the moment when there was no such a moment in our history. And with all respect to you, I live in this world even longer than any of you. You know it by heart. I greet all of the silver ones who might be with us on this webinar as well. Having said that, we are living in the AI-driven world, or AI-impacted era. So is there anything that you noticed in your own learning which is completely different, which you never had, which you never seen in your own learning in the past, with that you are using today, or that you are confronted with today in your roles, in your lives, also looking at your environment? And here I would start with Łukasz. At the end of the day, the AI skills director for Microsoft. So how is it, Łukasz, in your own learning? Did it really change? Was it impacted by AI? Did you observe it?
So definitely, when I'm comparing my daily agenda across the last couple of years, it's definitely different, right? Definitely, I need to drive more impact by myself. So for sure, I believe the teams are smaller versus in the past. So we need to wear multiple hats. On one moment, I'm the marketer. On the second, I'm the product owner, right? Then I'm the PR person who is trying to tackle some challenging questions about the future of AI. So I believe definitely we are, first of all, wearing more hats. And I believe here AI could really empower us, because, all of those assistants are waiting for our prompts. So at the end, we could get that set of insights for the categories that we never been tackling in the past. And of course, we should all come with the critical thinking that's important to understand in case we are going to the right direction. Because I would never be a full-time lawyer, right? With the help of AI, but I could at least make maybe my conversation with my friends from legal department more productive, because I could come with that kind of prep that I could handle thanks to my copilot friends. So I believe definitely my daily routine is different. I'm delivering projects in much different way, in a different way, sorry. But I believe what is truly different even versus 2025, so a year ago, that those AI features are helping me not only to get some insights, but they are taking that insights further whenever I will say okay, right? So for example,
Mm.
when I'm doing a new project in the area that I never touched, I'm able to ask my copilot coworker, who will not only give me the context, so some insights, but it would also ask in case he or she could simply send an email, right? In case that particular set of discussion that we had could be translated to the deck that would be sent to some leader who should give me some money for my project. So I believe at the end, I'm seeing definitely that AI is touching more and more parts of my routine. Definitely, thanks to it, I need to deliver much more. So I need to generate more value for my organization. But personally, I believe it's exciting because I could touch the topics that we never in my radar, right? So, for example, I have a personal kind of dream to join the product team one day and definitely have more impact on specific kind of product rules that we could deliver. And thanks to it, maybe I could act as someone who is owning the specific kind of part of the backlog for the features that we are handling. And I could act as someone who is already in the role with that help of those assistants who are getting smarter and smarter. But I would conclude and summarize briefly that yes, definitely we could get more insights, but we should do far more with those outputs, and we should drive far more impact thanks to the fact that we are equipped with those more and more intelligent kind of assistants.
Thanks a lot. So you really see a lot of opportunities, but you also state that we should use what we already produce and output it in a wiser and smarter way, right? For really the impacts for whatever it's needed. Thanks a lot, Audrey. What's your view here? Has anything changed in your own learning since we've been
Hello? Am I still audible?
Yes,
much
all
more
good. I believe, yeah.
Okay, good. So, in my line of work in cybersecurity, the hype right now is all about agentic AI, agentic SOC, right? So, the question I'm always being asked right now by my customers is, so if I use agentic AI, if I use agentic SOC, does it automatically replace my human factor, in
yeah.
the SOC? My answer is always no, because AI helps you triage faster, do the investigation faster. So the automation is there. So the low level test, the easy, yeah, the most labor intensive tasks, you give it to the AI, right? And then your human factor, you still need a mind, you still need the human to manage your SOC. That's where the human factor comes in. They can discern from right and wrong, and they will be managing your whole SOC. So my answer to them is no. Agentic AI or agentic SOC does not replace your human. In fact, it will help your staff so that they can focus on mission critical tasks rather than spending their money on low level tasks.
So you say the operational context and maybe the costs we've been paying or time we've been investing into the operational tasks, thanks to the AI impact, could really be translated into our more productive time, into a bit more strategic context. On the other
Yes.
hand, both of you, both Łukasz and Audrey, say, and I really wish to stop our audience thinking for a while before we go to Flora on this one, that human factor remains super important, bearing in mind the future context. Not sure whether you are, I'm sure you are, but I don't know whether all of our audience is present today and listening to the podcast afterwards know that recent Gallup research has shown that the biggest question mark on the engagement level is in the mid managers zone. This is so important so much correlating with what Łukasz stated, that there are less resources. I hate this name, but let's say there is not so much talent as we used to have in the past. People are wearing more hats, and the mid-management is asking themselves the question, will my role exist? Will I still have a team? How will the future of human context brought by Audrey and Łukasz exist in the future? Will my role stay the same, or what should I do to keep turning my previous role into a more productive one, or the one which will bring more value to the business, to the customers, to the partners? The Gallup output was shared with the world, I think, not longer than 3 weeks ago. And I think we should also carefully look into this context of technology pace and human factor, where we are going and how we are making a combination of these two, not to kill the outcomes or outputs that people were producing for a long time. So the question is, as Łukasz stated as well, how are we going to do it smarter? What will be the future of work? And I think these are also the contexts that we need to bear in mind if we talk about learning, not only for ourselves, but also for our teams, and also the context of management of the hybrid teams, not only the human factor, but also the agents brought by Audrey to the discussion. So now, Flora, has anything changed in your own learning, since we are heavily using now the AI and its tools, also producing something much quicker than we've been producing in the past? How does it work in your case?
Yes, so in general, for me as a product person, it makes my work more efficient, indeed, because, for example, in our organization, we use those tools in a lot of things. So for automatization of preparing, for example, some documentation, prototyping, we vibe code some elements. So it really changed the way how technology work, in my opinion. But for me personally, AI is a set of tools. So I believe that those tools, they support our work, it's, speed it up, and so on. But at the end of the day, as Audrey and Łukasz mentioned, they won't replace us, especially when it comes to some core elements of our work. I recently heard interesting quote that AI ends where our decision begin, and this is really true, because it gives us some insights. It is, but it won't make some strategic decision for us. Yeah, this is, and here we have this human factor, in fact, because here we have to make our decision by as a manager. So for a product person, yes, not as a product, not when it comes to those managing part. On the other hand, it is fascinating topic, because I have a lot of discussion around this with my product team, and this is area where my team challenged me, for example. So but it's incredibly inspiring. So yeah.
So the output is AI, as you stated. I love it. AI ends when our decision begins.
Yes,
so this is a super positive context. AI will help you. The data and analytics will help you. It's quicker, smarter, more precise maybe, but at the end of the day, the human is the one who makes the decision.
Yeah.
Tim, going smoothly to the pre-last question, probably. I really wish to start from Audrey now. Is there any part of learning, something that you really experienced yourself, like a catchy point, like an eye-opener, that you really like to share now, that was embedded into a learning process of your ecosystem? Anything which you, let's focus on the last 12 months, something which you really embedded into a turning point, a change, a transformation in your surrounding.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to limit myself to the past 12 months, but I would like to share
Okay.
something past shape me all throughout my career, right? So I used to make this mistake of asking questions, being the challenger, but I use it incorrectly as a weapon instead of a bridge. So I'd ask a tough
Mm,
question to trap someone in a contradiction or prove that my point was right. So I quickly learned that when you challenge person without deep empathy, so that's aligned with what Lucas said earlier. You have
yeah.
to ask respectfully, challenge respectfully, right? So for me, it's also asking questions, but with empathy. They won't be seeing a partner. They will just see an interrogator asking the hard questions. So you're the people you talk to, they immediately shut down, right? So that's a mistake that I try to avoid continuously. So today I still ask those brutally honest questions, and deeply detailed questions, but the key factor is here, is always collaboration. So you ask questions so that you both parties can collaborate. It's being a learn it all who stands side by side with your client, using that same curiosity to uncover their blind spots, so we can build something meaningful, right? So my advice to everyone here, especially those who are just starting their career: never be afraid to ask questions, for no question is stupid. So I'd like to go back to the start of my career, where my mentor told me, never be afraid to ask questions. So that will be my advice to to everyone here.
Wonderful, Audrey. And you built on Łukasz's statement. If you ask the questions, do it in a respectful way, bearing this empathy and thinking about the other person, right? The dialogue one. Why are we doing this, and doing this in a respectful way? That's I think a critical point, and I'm so grateful to you that both of you are bringing this context to our discussion. Łukasz, what's on your side in terms of this own learning that you really embedded into your ecosystem, something which made an impact in terms of making a change, transition, transformation? I think we could make it like a longer deal now, not just the 12 months.
Sure. So on the AI side, I'll combine it with the flavor of AI. Definitely, I'm trying to secure more time to have a kind of conversation with agents who are not only helping me to bring insights, but definitely they also suggesting how I could move the project further. So I believe every player in the AI nowadays has some co-work like kind of solution where you could simply throw the challenge as a prompt and it would help you divide it into specific steps. And always I'm trying to think, am I able to dedicate an hour to that specific kind of first moment in the project to have that one-on-one conversation with AI, because it's coming with some really obvious points, but sometimes we are so obsessed about rushing over, or we need to deliver it as soon as possible, that we don't have that promise that every AI player is saying, that we could do our jobs and tasks not only quicker, but also we could be more mindful. So I'm trying to unlock that value that sometimes even I'm pictured by myself. So I'm trying to simply have more quality time around some specific challenges. And I believe those core like agents are helping us to really divide the big challenge into some easy to go steps. Generally, across my big aha moments, I would say it's worth to pick right battles, and that's the quote from my manager. And definitely, we are all having so many things in our to-do lists, in our calendars, our backlogs, however we are calling our responsibilities that we need to deliver. And I believe we could easily get swamped by a number of discussions that we would have. But I believe always to even come back to what you said together between Audrey and you, Gosia, that with that respect, also you need to be mindful about the time, and in case it would help you to move the things further, because it's not all about how you are tricking your colleagues, but it's also how much time you will save in the project, right? Or really, your question might help to simply unlock some new opportunities for the team, especially on the personal side, in case you are a team manager, but also in case you are handling a project well. Such questions could really unlock something that would bring simply the value to the backlog, to your to-do list, and to your agenda. So I believe it's worth to say, okay, I will not ask the question because it does not make sense. Or in case someone is challenging you directly, I believe we will all find respectful ways on how we could say, hey, I will take it offline, or I believe it's not the part of the conversation. So I believe it's okay to pose at the end some challenges that are thrown at us.
And Audrey, sorry, Flora, in your case, I need to take my charger, forgive me. Please tell me, what's your view in this context? How does it really work in your case? Did you embed into the learning process of the ecosystem community, the group of people, your customers who are located all over the world? Did you really make such an context to make the things happen?
Yes, so from those technical parts, so if we're discussing about AI tools, etc., I think I introduced a lot of tools, processes, where definitely makes my work efficient, as I mentioned. When it comes to those more human side, let's say, I'm definitely learning how to be a better listener and how to respond. I think I'm a highly empathic person, and but I don't think that it always come across that way. So this is extremely important. I think that also really important is in person. So if we discuss with somebody in person, especially after COVID era, we have online conversation. Everybody write something on the on the Slack, on any channel, and it's really bad, because the person who responds can understand what you would like to say differently. So I think this point is really important. My mentors always told me that above at all, you always have to think about business and its continuity, etc., etc. It's really important, but at the end of the day, I think you are left, if you leave some place, you left this place with relationship with the people. So this is really important. So always, even if you are thinking about business, how to drive it, it's the second factor. So it's more human one. And yeah.
Guys, this is really amazing. That of course the selection of my guests for today was not a coincidence, right? It was thoughtful. Knowing you really built on each other, and each of you is a technology fan, no doubt. At the same time, each of you is bringing this human factor into this conversation, which is making me super happy. The important thing, and now Flora is now walking to the airport probably, or somewhere changing the place. Anyway,
Laura tried to find a charger, but I have.
yeah,
So
yeah. You see, that's not only me with some challenges today. But all in all, one thing that each of you quickly will kindly share with us, with me and us. What's the one thing, one mistake that you will never repeat, being a constant learner and a constant challenger in your daily routine, something which stays in your mind as a kind of a lesson learned towards the others? What's this? Audrey.
So for me, I'd like to go back to when you be the challenger, I don't want to be the interrogator. Yes, I would ask the hard questions. Yes, I would challenge the status quo, but I would never make the same mistake of being an interrogator and asking without empathy, without respect.
Okay,
So
so
I
this is what you shared before. This is coming so deeply from your heart. This is really now such a strong lesson learned from your journey. Łukasz,
yeah.
what's the one mistake that you would never like to repeat and you will never repeat in the future?
So I have to admit, for sure, I made many. So I wish I could pick only one. What resonates with me is around the point that I made earlier. That I believe I picked not the right battles. That I've been kind of trapped with some questions that will not challenge the project or the effort, but rather me for some context. So then we are still human beings, so we love to play with each other, and definitely I wish I would have that courage and kind of perspective to assess some questions that are not really targeting the effort that we are driving, but rather are targeting personally me. And I would never do the same for other human beings. So definitely I've seen such cases, and simply in case you've seen that someone is trying to play with you, I believe you, Audrey, brought a great example on how we could ask such questions. I would simply drop. And I believe it's coming from another important area of emotional intelligence, that we could, I believe, perceive those questions through a completely different angle. And we could simply close the question by saying, yes, thank you, but it's not the part of the game as for now. And there are so many clever answers that we could give to such questions that are simply targeting personally us instead of some business matters.
Thank you so much. So let's focus on the business context. Let's not make the personal games, right? Because it doesn't help anyone, and for sure it doesn't help the relationships at all. Flora, what's your story? The one mistake that you would never like to, or that you will never repeat in the future that you did in the past?
I think one of the mistakes it's trying to solve some certain people issues remotely. I mentioned that in my opinion, those in-person connection is really important. I know that in any organization you work probably remotely in our as well, but sometimes if you would like to need to solve some problem, if you see that some relation is not pretty good, let's talk. Yeah, let's meet with each other, let's go to the beer or call our what you want, etc. So and let's discuss, because I think conversation and here is the power, in fact. So so this is one of the lessons I have. So so in-person conversation in the situation where you have to solve something between people.
So again, being a human being in the AI-driven world is the must be to be successful and build relationships with real humans.
Yeah. Let's add AI-driven plus post-COVID world, in fact, because also
post-COVID. Yeah. And I promise the last one, because we are ending our conversation. I will go to Łukasz now. What is the one sentence or reflection that you'd like to leave our audiences, whom we, by the way, greet very much from wherever we are, that you'd like to leave them with? Something which is coming to your mind in the context of constant challenger, constant learner, and all what we spoke about today.
Definitely, I have many thoughts, but also I'll build on that human angle. That definitely we are more and more, let's say, empowered by AI-driven insights. But it's worth to stay as a human being with all of the flaws, cons that we are all seeing in our personalities, because it brings the empathy, and I believe you Flora mentioned that, and it's so important that I believe with every single month that is ahead of us, we'll have more and more on our shoulders. So being someone who would ask, hey, are you okay? And it would happen over the beer or the coffee, like you, Flora, mentioned. It might be a 5-minute conversation that would build a huge support for someone, and it might be the relief that could unlock some superpowers that person, that human being who is working with us, might simply then invest into all of our efforts that we have between 9 to 5.
Wonderful, Łukasz. Audrey, what's your message to the world today?
So I'll just keep it short and sweet. So in line with what we've discussed today, being a challenger, we have to do it strategically, and we're disrupting the status quo. So strategic disruption.
Strategic disruption. And
Yeah.
Flora, what's your message to all who listen to us and will listen to us?
Yes, so my message is that don't be afraid to be a challenger, because in my opinion, it's as we discussed, so it drives organization, drive yourself, it's related with your growth, etc. So it's related sometimes with some risks, But if you will find some balance between, those how to convince people to your idea, how to show your idea to the world, I think will be fine. So, but don't be afraid to be a challenger.
Don't be afraid to be the challenger. The world is paying back. Stay human, love connections, but also stay aligned with the technology, which is bringing amazing opportunities to all of us. Guys, wherever you are, thank you so much for being with us today. We promise, as always, to produce the podcast of our discussion. We will be sharing this through our broad channels. And with this, I really wish to say so much thank you to amazing Flora, to wonderful Audrey, to fantastic Łukasz. Greet you all. And let me say my favorite word in Filipino, salamat, which I've been practicing for many years, which means thank you. Thank you, dziękuję Flora. Thank you, dziękuję Łukasz. Thanks to all who joined us. Thanks also for understanding that sometimes technology is bringing some challenges and we need to overcome it, which was also visible during today. So stay healthy, stay happy, stay fulfilled, use the technology in a smart way, and let's stay humans and connected forever.